Hi everybody, welcome back to PEP Talks. I am Sarah Workman-Ciccone, your Certified Personality Type Instructor, and today we are talking about extroversion and introversion in parents and children. Since we only have 5 minutes, we're going to get right to it. Briefly, I want to just draw your attention to, if you have a big screen, these are our 4 dichotomies that create the building blocks of personality type. And today we're talking about that first dichotomy, energy, how people prefer to get their energy. This is one of the most valuable dichotomies that we could talk about when it comes to young children, because it's one of the most evident even from the time the kids are in their cribs, when they're babies and toddlers. We can see right away behaviors that evidence a preference for extroversion or introversion. I want to be clear, everyone extroverts, which means gets their energy from the outer world, and everyone introverts, getting their energy from an inner world inside themselves. But the question is, much like hand dominance, what do we prefer to do most of the time? What feels more natural and effortless? Outside of the roles we've learned to play at work, at home, at family, as adults, we've learned a certain amount of self-control, we hope, to be able to extrovert and introvert appropriately. But if left to our own devices, what would we choose to do? And for our children who've not yet developed that sort of self-control, what are they naturally preferring to do? And how can we decode those behaviors and find the underlying meanings in the messages they're sending us so that we're helping them solve problems and support their natural gifts rather than create more problems by misunderstanding their behavior? So how do we know whether someone prefers extroversion or introversion? There are a few ways. And this will be only step 1 of studying extroversion and introversion. Give you enough to think about till the next pep talk. Extroverts tend to do and then think and then do. They like to act first. They like to get up on their feet and try it. They're comfortable with doing a rough draft, a general sketch, just get something up there and we'll see if it works and then we'll reevaluate it. Introverts tend to prefer to think and then do and then think. They prefer to reflect. They might say, I need to sleep on it. This makes sense because actually it's been studied that there is a difference in the chemical pathway in the brain between extroverts and introverts. Extroverts use the dopamine pathway, which is a shorter pathway to taking information to the centers in the brain, and introverts use the acetylcholine pathway, which is longer in order to get that information in a settled spot where it can be evaluated and usable and is really established. So it only would follow that an extrovert would feel more comfortable doing and an introvert would feel more comfortable reflecting before doing. So for extroverts and introverts, this can often be misread as disobedience when you see an introverted child who's reluctant to move on to something or leave a situation because they might need more lead time in order to adjust. Sometimes we can give a child a 5-minute warning, and if we're going to something else they enjoy, that's enough. But for an introverted child, and there's a caveat to this, but for an introverted child, we might benefit from giving a 30-minute warning, then a 20, then a 15, a 10, a 5, a 2, and then, let's start putting on our shoes and really leading them step by step through the transition. Because if the child's not ready to go, it's the old, you're not listening, which is actually just untrue. The child is listening, they just weren't ready yet. And especially when we have a child that's stressed and over the edge, they can't articulate what's going on. And I'm talking about kids that are under the age of 6 mainly, but that stressed 8, 7, 6-year-old, it can be in there too. Now, I'm not saying that therefore the introverted child or the extroverted child should be able to do whatever they please. Of course not. This is about understanding people's preferences so we can decode their behavior and support them better as they learn respect, responsibility, accountability, civility, manners, appropriateness in the world. We're always going to learn better if we use our best gifts. Going back to the handedness example, if I'm learning handwriting, but I'm only allowed to use my non-dominant hand, it's going to be a much more stressful experience than if I'm allowed to use my preferred hand and my best gifts to learn that new information. So if we're mindful of our children's preferences as we teach them to function in the world, then we're going to get a much better outcome and the benefit of a closer relationship and more understanding and trust between parent and child, because we're respecting their natural preference rather than having them fight against it. Now, extroverts prefer to talk in order to think. These are the children you will frequently see restating exactly what the teacher just said, and it can seem as if they're just trying to draw attention. Possible, but frequently it's that they're just trying to understand what the directions were, and they need to speak about it in order to rephrase that and get it settled in their minds. Introverts more need to think to talk. That's like the example we used last time of a child that might be reluctant to join a class discussion without prior preparation. And that can be misunderstood by an extroverted teacher and misread as a refusal to participate. So again, these are examples of how we can misunderstand each other simply by not being aware of these normal type differentiations in behavior. Now, I feel my 5 minutes is coming to a close, so we'll talk more about this next time, but just a few things to keep in mind. As you're observing yourself and your children, observe differences in pace. Observe differences in exhaustion. Is your child exhausted from being out in the world, or do you notice your child being exhausted from being at home? When they start to act out, climb the furniture, throw things, have a meltdown, especially little ones that have been inside too long. How are they with making friends? Bossiness and shyness, is that an issue? Are people, making those statements about kids' behaviors? And late bloomers. If you have an older introvert and they just seem to be behind the maturity curve, it could be that they're just simply on that think, do, think, slower processing pathway, which is totally normal. And so we want to be supportive of our late bloomers and not push them when they're really not ready yet, if it's something that's not necessary. So thank you so much for your time today. We're probably a little bit over, but I look forward to our next pep talk. If you have any questions, please comment or email me. I love to work with parents and kids to help unravel those misunderstandings, decode behavior, and strengthen relationships. Thanks.